Saturday. The next morning, eager to explore and be back by the sea, I get up early to start my walk. Upon reaching the shore, I take pleasure in listening to the pounding of the waves smashing into the groins and racing onto the beach. Except for the occasional dog walker, no one else is around. No boat or steamer is in sight. Instead, a repetitive, descending reflection of the morning sun imperfectly replicates itself on the surface of the retreating tide and tentatively promises a clear, bright day. For over a mile, I follow the shore and revel in the unfolding of an infinite prospect. The wind, however, is strong, sleepless and cold. Having pushed away the early morning mists, its gusts now blow the gulls about the sky, toss what is loose, and push me on. At times, I come close to being knocked over or carried by its power. Lightheartedly, I fantasized that I might soon be among a group of airborne ladies in a George Cruikshank mid-19th century satirical illustration ridiculing the fad for blown-up, capacious dresses. The drawing features a group of fashionable holidaymakers who are strolling by the sea on a blustery day. They are shortly surprised by gusts of winds that catch their voluminous garments, causing them to swell and swell. Flabbergasted, the ladies find themselves borne aloft, tumbling, fluttering, and swirling in the sky above the waves. Their bonnets are a-flying, their parasols are blowing inside out, and their dresses are ballooning. A desperate husband who has lost his hat to the blasts of wind attempts to run after them. An astonished child, holding a bucket and spade, struggles to keep her balance. And the smoke from a distant ocean steamer leaves a horizontal trail shaped by the gale's strength. After contentedly walking along uninhabited sands for nearly an hour, past clusters of vacated homes and rows of padlocked Victorian beach huts, only footprints remain on the beach as evidence of there being any human presence, I reach the outer edges of Southwold, perched high on a cliff. I walk up Gun Hill, a steep passageway lined with cannons. There must be a history here. And catch a glimpse of an imposing white lighthouse built in 1888 after erosion had destroyed an early one. It is from this hill that residents in May 1672 had watched the Dutch fleet appear and open fire on British ships. Following the landlord's instructions, I cross the green and turn down into a narrow descending avenue where, much to my delight, I catch sight of two men braiding a willow fence, an ancient craft dating from the Neolithic age. Fascinated, I pause to watch them work. They have cut moderately thick branches from a willow tree, pounded them at intervals into the moist ground to make standing beams 6 to 8 feet long. And then, after soaking other branches in water for at least a week so as to make them supple, they have gradually started weaving or braiding them one on top of the other through the erected beams. Soon, they will stomp the braided limbs down, clean up the edges until they create a thick, woven cloth of willow. As time passes, the fence will thicken and even grow shoots. Most last up to 10 years. The best time to build is now, early spring. As I pass by, I catch the smell of a wet, muddy bog, the odor from the soaked willow branches. As instructed by my landlord, I turn off this paved avenue onto a footpath, a narrow, uninhabited, God-forsaken dirt track that borders the far-reaching marshlands. Leaving the carefully tended and cultivated town behind, this route offers me passage through a wild and slightly forbidding landscape. Defeated by blasts of wind, The entangled grasses on either side bend and lie flat. On patches of open water, swans rebuff the blustery weather. Gallantly and gracefully, they curve their long white necks and dip their smooth black beaks below its troubled surface. Calling to one another, ducks scatter on the wind-swept water. For over a mile, I press on and cautiously follow a trail full of pebbles and treacherously deep, soggy mud puddles that I must attempt to skirt. My progress seems to take forever. Although these surroundings possess a certain beauty, their marshy, lowland temperament confine and threaten to detain me, especially since, from this point, neither the sea nor the vault of the sky is visible. Feeling trapped, I yearn for a view of the unbounded sea, especially when I come to a lengthy section lined with trees that menacingly bend toward me and each other to create a darkening tunnel-like arc. Stimulated by the howling wind, my solitude gets the better of me. The trees' spindly branches and twisted, slender trunks bring to mind the gnarled, grasping fingers of some evil, enchanted fairy being. I am relieved when this segment opens to a harbor and at last offers a wide vista of the North Sea, as well as an extensive prospect of the flat wetlands bordering an estuary. Released, I stand by the mouth of the River Blythe that empties out into the sea. Here I have no choice but to turn inland and follow a gravelled and sandy way that borders this large body of water and leads by moorings, chandleries, boat builders, restored wooden fishermen sheds, as well as by a hut that sells locally caught cod, skate, plaice, sole, sea bass, scallops, oysters, and crabs, reminders of what was once plentiful. Further on, I amble by the Harbour Inn, a restored, rustic, whitewashed brick structure famous for its locally sourced food and beer. High above the front door, the landlord has marked the height to which the flood of 1953 had reached. The damage must have been devastating. The inlet goes on forever. Growing weary, I am relieved to reach a wooden tea shack and enter its warmth. Oh, the pleasure of sitting down and indulging in a reassuring toasted tea cake and coffee. The only other customers are a couple. Their dog obediently rests under the table, who inform me that if I carry on for another mile or so, I shall eventually be able to cross the broad estuary by a lengthy footbridge, the Bailey Bridge, that had replaced the light railway swing bridge after the line had been shut down in 1929. As early as 1875, a train going 16 miles per hour had once carried holidaymakers across this body of water to Southwold. So worried were the train drivers that someone would fiddle with the swing bridge that they insisted on carrying the keys to the mechanism themselves. Determined to continue and get to the other side, I step outdoors and start off again. The sound of the restless wind whistling through the folded sails and the percussive clanging of the metal equipment on the boats accompany my passage. Finally, I reach Bailey Bridge, a tall, narrow iron footbridge just under a kilometre in length, balanced on corroding support beams that allows me passage to the south side of the river. A year later, the bridge is deemed unsafe and closed for necessary repairs. This vulnerable, forlorn bridge is open to every gust that rages. Hanging onto the railings for dear life so I shall not blow over into the graying, tin plate-coloured, ruffled water, I push my way across the estuary and gain an elevated view of the surrounding deep green flooded marshlands rippling reeds and wind-blown fields of sedge bordered by slick, shining mudflats that appear to crease and fold upon each other. I am reminded of the opening of Dickens's Great Expectations when Pip wanders into the flat wilderness of the marsh country on a raw, bleak day. He looks out at the intersecting dikes and to the leaden skies and fixes his eye upon the distant, savage lair from which the wind was rushing. I wonder if I too might meet a man, an escaped convict, soaked in water and smothered in mud and lamed by stones and cut by flints and stung by nettles and torn by brambles, who limped and shivered and glared and growled, and whose teeth chattered in his head as he seized me by the chin. Today there are no convict ships, nor are there ships heavily laden with wool on their way to the sea. The estuary river is empty and largely silted up. Once across the footbridge, I descend and see that I have a choice of paths. Wanting security, as well as desiring to be back by the sea, I select a narrow way, a dike, that leads me back to the shore and to what in the distance looks like a neighboring village. I have no idea where the other paths go. The puddles and mud are worse here. I am relieved to meet a sole man, and not a convict bound in irons, walking toward me. He reassures me that all will be well. Eventually, rather worn out from navigating through and around the muck, I reach the seaside village of Walberswick, a smaller and even more rarefied version of Southwold. The population in 2011 is a mere 380 people, most of whom seem, from the look of things, there are no cars and the streets are deserted, to be owners of fastidiously maintained, elegant holiday homes. Since it is winter, they are not here. Later, I learned that this Georgian village has attracted and continues to appeal to many British celebrities from the arts. In the 1890s, the place had once been the residence of a circle of British Impressionists, and in 1914, the noted architect Charles Rennie Mackintosh had lived here. The list goes on. For instance, Anna Freud kept a weekend retreat in this village. Thank heavens, one rather ordinary cafe is open, with only one customer. All the other shops are closed for the season. Exhausted, I go to the counter and order a cheese and pickle sandwich. On the way, I notice a sign, "No dogs in the toilets." I really don't want to retrace my footsteps on the difficult puddle-patched route I had taken to get here. So I asked the young woman behind the counter for advice about another way to return. She sent me a mile or two through the village and onto a bicycle path. She advises, "You will have gone too far if you pass the parish church." Golden gorse bushes line this narrow paved route through desolate heathland. Under the sinking light, completely alone, not a soul in sight for miles, and again feeling cut off from the sea, I am momentarily transported to the landscape of Christina Rossetti's poem Goblin Market. I wonder if at the next turn I might meet a troop or catch the cry of goblin men racing, whisking, tumbling, hobbling through clumps of furze and dew-wet grass. Or might a phantom coach drawn by headless horses, driven by a murderer hanged in the 18th century, come galloping toward me. Months later, I learn that there is a myth of such a haunting in these parts. Eventually, after 3 miles, the bike path returns me to the Bailey Bridge. I retrace my steps and thankfully find my way back down to the shore. The way seems endless. Wind-swept clouds gather and charge across what remains of this morning's blue sky. The weather is changing. Massive clouds overhead dwarf the ocean below and press down beneath the horizon as if wanting to drive and add their force to the undercurrents of the sea. I walk past brightly colored beach huts, now close to the season, and rejoin the promenade from which I gaze upon the open sands, the outgoing tide, and a solitary dog-walking trio who, rebuffed by blasts of wind, haltingly make their way next to the edge of the sea. After wandering along the sands and listening to the pebbles bruising each other in their retreat, I reach the pier not far from my hotel. Desiring a reward for my exertions, I enter the pier's cafe and treat myself to an extraordinarily large caramel sundae with a generous topping of whipped cream. Visitors sitting at an adjoining table notice its splendor and nod their hearty approval. It's a friendly, familiar moment that not only restores companionship and a sense of belonging, but also assuages my guilt for such an indulgence. By 5 o'clock, I am back at the Blythe Hotel and too tired, perhaps too full, to go down and purchase some supper.